I'm Tony Bruno. I'm here with a legend of the manosphere. He's an author of 4 books. He's a professional dating coach in the United States and internationally. He's been long known in the manosphere as the godfather of direct verbal game. I'm talking about Alan Roger Currie, the author of Mode 1, Let Women Know What You're Really Thinking. And he's with me today. How you doing today, sir?
Oh, I'm doing real well, Tony. Thank you for having me.
Good, good. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. Now, the first thing I wanted to talk to you about is I attended the 21 convention in 2018 as an attendee, and I thought your speech was brilliant. Now, my brother had put up a video of you, and he had said it's the absolute best dating advice book for men he had read. So, and that book is Mode 1. So talk to me about Mode 1 behavior, and when did you publish your first book?
I published my first ebook edition of Mode 1, Let the Women Know What You're Really Thinking, in May of 1999. And that
Wow.
quick backstory is it was a long time coming because I have an older brother named Steven. He's about 2.5 years older than me. And I started using what I now call Mode 1 behavior way back when I was in college. And it was actually starting with summer of 1984. And my brother saw some of the amazing results I got from it. And way back in 1986 was when it was summer of 86 when he first encouraged me to put it down on paper. And at the time, I kind of blew him off like, man, I'm not putting this on paper. And literally, he just kept being persistent. And then finally, in 1995, I kind of started putting all my thoughts on paper in the form of like a pamphlet, like a 25, 30-page pamphlet. And my brother gave it to some guys who were working for him in San Diego. And it started benefiting them. The advice I put in this like pamphlet started benefiting him. Anyway, then I turned it into an ebook and made it available on the internet in May of 1999. And essentially, Mode 1 is just a simple code word for confident, upfront, specific, straightforward honesty. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now, explain Mode 1 in a little more detail. So there is Mode 1, Mode 2, Mode 3, Mode 4.
Yeah, I have 4 modes. I call them the 4 modes of verbal communication. That's what I highlight. That's what my first book is all about. And basically, I just got to a point where I realized that when it came to how I verbally communicate things to women and the men who are friends and acquaintances of mine, I found that I could just generally divide it into 4 categories. So Mode 2 would be when your verbal communication style is very polite, well-mannered, cautious, sometimes overly cautious, very flattering and entertaining, and very vague and ambiguous.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the general characteristics of a Mode 2 verbal communication style. A Mode 3 verbal communication style would be when you communicate, you either, number one, don't communicate at all. You're kind of, for lack of a better term, a verbal coward. Like you might have certain desires, interests, and intentions you want to express to people, and particularly women, but you're just scared to. You're scared of being rejected, and you're scared of not having your desires, interests, and intentions reciprocated. So you either keep them to yourself indefinitely, which again would make you a verbal coward, or you become blatantly dishonest, blatantly disingenuous / insincere / phony, and you tend to be very misleading and manipulative in your behavior with people in general, and particularly with women. So that would be Mode 3. Mode 4 is almost, I like to call Mode 4 the evil twin of Mode 1. It's similar to Mode 1 in the sense that you're about upfront, direct, very verbally direct type honesty, but it has connotations of anger, bitterness, resentment. Like a guy who would be Mo 4 would be like a guy who, say, had his heart broken by a number of women, or feels like he's been unfairly rejected by a number of women, or gotten frequently manipulated by a lot of women. So he kind of takes the negative attitude of, oh, all you women are bitches. All you women are scandalous whores and gold diggers. And you could say his straightforward honesty is born of anger. It's not coming from a place of, say, confidence and courage. It's more so coming from a place of anger and bitterness. And then again, Mo 1 is just when you just are unapologetically honest with people about what you want from them, what you want from them, or why you want to interact with them. You don't try to mislead or bullshit people about simply why you want to interact with them. So, for example, a woman, if you're in the company of a woman that you're attracted to and you know you want to have sex with her, you wouldn't try to hide that. You wouldn't try to lie about that. You wouldn't try to bullshit about that. In one way or another, you would let her know that, hey, the reason I'm talking to you is because I want to have sex with you.
Now, when it comes to the mode 1, mode 2, mode 3, mode 4, now, like you said, when you're communicating with a woman, and I think you touched on this in the 2018 speech at 21, was that there's different ways you can communicate that to a woman. Some women you can probably say be extremely, and I think you call that, is that mode 1 hardcore?
Yeah, you got to remember. Yeah, I actually have 3 versions, technically 4, but for the most part, 3 versions, variations of mode 1 that basically depend on what language you want to use. I'll start from most explicit to least explicit. My most explicit version is what I call Mode 1 Hardcore. I actually wrote an ebook called Mode 1 Hardcore. And speaking of that, on a quick side note, there's a lot of guys who tend to assume that Mode 1 Hardcore is the only variation of Mode 1 that I use with women, and that's not true. And I have to,
I'm gonna agree with you on that. Because I think when guys automatically think mode 1, because that was kind of my impression. And then when you said that, there was different ways to basically how to communicate with a woman and let her know that that's what you want. So go ahead and explain it more for sure.
Yeah. So, okay, so let's start with the objective. You want to engage in 1 or more episodes of, say, short-term, non-monogamous casual sex with a woman. Say that's the objective. So Mode 1 Hardcore would be if you've met a woman, let's call her Linda, and within the first few seconds after you initiate a conversation with Linda, you might say something like, hey, Linda, I gotta tell you, you are an attractive, sexy woman, and I want to slide my hard dick all in your pussy and fuck the shit out of you. And of course, she might say, what? What did you just say? I can't believe you said that. And you hold your gun. You don't like back from it and say, oh, I didn't mean to offend you. Oh, I didn't mean to be too, you maintain your friend. You're like, you heard what I said. I want to put my hard dick in your pussy and I want to fuck the shit out of you. So if you go that route using a high degree of profanity, X-rated, triple X-rated type explicit language, I refer to that as Mode 1 Hardcore. Then the next level down would be simply what I call regular or default Mode 1. Using the same scenario, if I was using regular Mode 1, I would start off using tame language. So I might say, Linda, how you doing? My name is Alan Roger Currie. Pleasure to meet you. Hey, let me just, get to the point. I think you're attractive. I think you're very sexually appealing. And I would love for you to share my company one-on-one at some point within the next, say, week or 2. What's your thoughts on that? And then you kind of play off of her response to that initial approach. So the first thing you would do with a regular or conventional Mode 1 approach is you would invite a woman to share your company. And I always like to emphasize that specific phrase, one-on-one. Because sometimes I find if you just say, hey, would you like to share my company? Someone will suggest, well, I got 2 girlfriends and maybe me and my 2 girlfriends can hook up with you and 2 of your And I'm like, no, 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 no. I don't do no group dates and group hookups, unless it's, gonna be group sex. But so I always say one-on-one. I say, when would you like to share my company one-on-one? Or I would like for you to share my company one-on-one at some point in the near future. And then usually one of 2 to 3 things is gonna happen. If a woman is not interested in you, just flat out not interested in you, what I call a rejecter, she's just gonna simply say that. She's gonna say something like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm married," or "I'm sorry, I'm engaged to be married," or "I have a long-term boyfriend," or it might be just simply, "I'm not interested." And at that point, you would just leave her alone. When you can usually tell when a woman is interested, is she's either gonna make comments and or ask you questions. Make comments and or ask. So usually when I use that default approach, a woman might say, "Do you start all conversations with women like this? Is this how you approach all women?" Once a woman starts asking me questions like that, I'll say to myself, okay, she's at least halfway interested because she's asking me questions.
Now, in your speech, you had mentioned that, like, if she's not basically engaging with you, if she just pulls back, but if you do say that and she's still engaging, even though she's telling you, "Oh no, I'm not going to do that," I'm sure that was from your 2008 speech. So even if they still talking to you, then that's good.
Yep, exactly. That's always, even if you're in the midst of a woman criticizing you or so. I don't know. I think you're aware of this, but in case you're not, Tony, there's 5 archetypes of women I talk about just about all of my books. And that would be reciprocators, rejectors, wholesome pretenders, erotic hypocrites, and manipulative time wasters. Your most straightforward women are your reciprocators and rejectors. A reciprocator, if she finds you attractive and sexually appealing, she's going to let you know that. She's not going to try to hide it, deny it. As soon as you express interest in her, she's going to say, "I'm interested in you." Similarly, a rejector, she's not going to try to play games with you or bullshit you about her lack of interest. If you invite a woman who's a rejecter to share your company, she's going to very quickly and straightforwardly tell you, "I'm not interested," or "I'm already in a relationship," or "I'm already married." The 3 trickier types of women is your wholesome pretenders, your erotic hypocrites, and your manipulative time wasters. And to give the quick gist of each one, a wholesome pretender is a woman that behind closed doors, 90% of the time, she's down to engage in 1 or more episodes of short-term non-monogamous casual sex, but she's very paranoid and self-conscious about being slut-shamed. She's very conscious of her public image and her social reputation. So once you propose casual sex to a wholesome pretender, she's going to initially resist. She's not going to reject per se, but she's going to resist. Because the main thing with her, she's going to want to find out, are you a man who's private and confidential and discreet? Private, confidential, and discreet? And are you a non-judgmental type guy? If you pass her test in those 2 categories, typically she's going to go ahead and sleep with you, but she's always going to give you some initial resistance. Similar to her, but a little different, is the erotic hypocrite. The erotic hypocrite, she's similar to the wholesome pretender, but the main difference is she's more pretentious. She's more materialistic. Matter of fact, she's usually highly materialistic and status oriented, and she's very argumentative and antagonistic. She's going to, what's known among most men in manosphere, as shit test you. The erotic hypocrite is going to shit test you. Because, and where that comes from, we always, talk about guys being alpha or beta. That relates to the erotic hypocrite. She wants to know, are you a true, genuine, legitimate alpha male? And why that's important to her is because most women like her, erotic hypocrite types, they feel like, if you're a beta male, I'm not going to give you any sex for free. That's that general attitude of an erotic hypocrite. If she feels like you're a beta, an easy to manipulate beta male, her attitude is going to be like, you got to pay for this. You got at minimum, you're gonna have to take me out to a 5-star restaurant 3, 4, 5 weeks in a row before I have sex with you. You gotta, offer to pay some of my bills. You gotta buy me some materialistic gifts. You gotta do something financially beneficial for me before I agree to have sex with you. Whereas if she feels like you're an alpha male with a high degree of confidence, self-assurance, self-esteem, and backbone, then that's when she's gonna go ahead and eventually say, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and have sex with you for free. You ain't gotta do all the stuff that I would have a beta male do. So she's gonna give you a bunch of shit. And going back to our original point, what you brought up, erotic hypocrites, a lot of times men make the mistake of confusing them and conflating them with a rejecter. Like once erotic hypocrites start criticizing them and insulting them, they're saying in their mind, oh, okay, this woman must not be interested because she's criticizing me and insulting me. No. She's shit testing you. And you got to be able to withstand that. You can't let her criticisms and insults. And the biggest thing that you got to maintain in your mind is what you already alluded to, is you got to say to yourself, she's still talking to me. She hasn't ended the conversation. She might be saying a bunch of negative comments towards me, like, you're an asshole and you're a jerk and all that kind of stuff. But the fact of the matter is, she's still talking to me. That's what I always say to myself when I know I'm in the company of an erotic hypocrite. I always just say, she's still talking to me. And then finally, of the 5 is the manipulative time waster. She's pretty much just the opposite of the wholesome pretender and erotic hypocrite. The wholesome pretender and erotic hypocrite, deep down, they are interested in sharing your company sexually, but they want to kind of give you the misleading impression that they're not. Whereas a manipulative time waster is a woman who's not interested in sharing your company in a romantic manner or a strictly sexual manner, but she wants to give you the misleading impression that she is. And the main reason why is because she wants to either do one of two things, if not both. She wants to either exploit you for your non-sexual time, attention, and companionship, and or she wants to exploit you for your financial resources and material possessions. She wants to do one of those two, if not both. And then what happens if once she has exploited you for one of those two things, if not both, for a number of days, weeks, or months, then she's just going to discard you. When she has no more use to you, she's just going to discard you. And this relates to one of the reasons why I'm Mode 1, is because of the 5 archetypes, I want to identify time wasters the quickest. If I had a priority list of which of those 5 archetypes I want to identify the quickest, it's the manipulative time waster, because they can fool you with entertaining conversation.
Gotcha. Now your philosophy too, I guess it was inspired by a porn movie from 1980. It was Talk Dirty to Me. I have never seen that movie. So tell me how that movie inspired you to basically develop Mode 1.
Well, it's funny. I don't know if you can see over my right shoulder, but I actually have the poster from that movie on my wall. But yeah, I actually just covered this in a couple of videos I did just this week, actually. But yeah, the summer after I graduated from high school, which was I graduated from high school in 1981, and a couple months after I graduated, it was July of 1981. My brother and I were visiting some friends of the family, and matter of fact, he lives in Florida, and his parents were real tight with my parents, and we would go over their house all the time. And anyway, the parents had left to do something. They left us there. And this friend, he loved to show porno movies and crack jokes about it, which is another story for another day. You're not going to meet too many guys who want to do that. But he always liked to find like comedy in porno movies. So anyway, he put in this porn movie, and this is when VHS was first coming around. And he put in this VHS tape of this porn movie called Talk Dirty to Me. And it basically centers around this prolific womanizer named Jack, played by this legendary porn actor named John Leslie. And Jack, he would just go up to women. Basically, in a nutshell, he was Mode 1. More specifically, Mode 1 hardcore. Oh, I forgot to add my third version of Mode 1, but I'll get to it. I told you about 3 I stopped at 2, but I'll get to it. But anyway, John Leslie's character, Jack, was Mode 1 hardcore. He would meet women, and within the first 3 to 5 minutes, he would basically let them know, I want to fuck the shit out of you. And when I saw that movie, I was just like, because I had never, number one, I had never seen anybody in real life display that type of behavior. And even other fictional characters in movies. Like, at that time, I want to say the most smooth, seductive male character I'd seen in a movie would probably be Sean Connery as James Bond. And he was fairly straightforward in his own way. But even Sean Connery as James Bond wasn't on Jack's level. I mean, Jack, again, within the first 2, 3, 4 minutes of his conversations with women, he would let them know, I want to fuck the shit out of you. And what would usually happen is they would initially give him resistance, what I was talking about with wholesome pretenders and erotic hypocrites. They would usually start off having some type of adverse reaction to him, but then they would ultimately always give in. And my brothers saw me kind of taking mental notes. And I remember he told me at the time, he said, bruh, that won't work in real life. He said, if you tried that approach in real life, a woman's either going to slap the shit out of you, or at minimum, she's going to curse you out and just walk away from. He's like, please don't. So I kind of, at the time, again, that was July 1981, I kind of said, oh, okay, yeah, you're probably right. Then I ended up seeing a sequel to it called Talk Dirty to Me Part 2 in October of 1983. And then finally, that next summer, I had an experience that I chronicle in my book called Ooh, Say It Again. I have 6 verbal seduction stories in there that I chronicle. And the matter of fact, the first time I was at the 21 convention in 2017, at least 1/3 of my presentation was about verbal seduction story number 1 from Ooh, Say It Again. That was the very first time I used Mode 1 behavior in real life. But yeah, it was inspired by Talk Dirty to Me. In a nutshell, the biggest thing I picked up in Talk Dirty to Me is related to those 2 archetypes of the wholesome pretender and erotic hypocrite. Before I saw that movie, I used to take all of women's reactions on face value. So say if you said something sexually provocative to a woman, and let's say the woman acted like you were turning her off or being disrespectful and socially inappropriate, I would take that on face value and be like, okay, yeah, I must have fucked up. I must have said something, rude and offensive. But what I learned from Talk Dirty to Me and Talk Dirty to Me Part 2 is that a lot of women put on facades. They have their public facades. Not to say that men don't. A lot of us men, we have public facades. But then we have our more private, real selves. And what I start realizing, again, first from watching those movies and then from my own real life experiences, is that there's a lot of women I've had interactions with that initially had an adverse reaction to things I said to them that were real sexually provocative and sexually explicit, only to later on end up in bed with me. And they would admit, like I would ask a lot of these women, I would say, okay, let's say I was in bed with a woman named Danielle. I would say, hey, Danielle, why is it that you're laying in bed with me right now, but when I first told you I wanted to fuck you, you like kind of went off on me and acted like this very prudish bitch? And they would tell me, they would say, well, Alan, you got to understand, us women, we're socialized to always present ourselves as the prudish, strictly monogamy-oriented good girl. That's what our mothers tell us to do. That's what our fathers tell us to do. So we always try to play into that, the prudish, monogamy-oriented good girl persona. But deep down, we want to fuck just as much, if not more, than you guys want to fuck.
Kind of like that. I think it was an old song that said, "A lady in the streets and a freak in the bedroom."
There you go. That hit it on the head. Yeah, exactly. That's how most women are. The formal term for that is sexually duplicitous. That's what a sexually duplicitous woman is.
Now that's Say It Again, your second book. For anybody who doesn't know it, but Ooh, Say It Again is Mastering the Fine Art of Verbal Seduction and Kinky Erotic Dirty Talk. So that's your second book, if I'm correct?
Yeah, I published that. Well, kind of yes and no. Well, I'll say this. Paperback wise, I actually came out with a book called Upfront and Straightforward. Let the manipulative game players know what you're really thinking in 2009. So technically, Upfront and Straightforward is my second book, definitely my second paperback. But if you're really evaluating in terms of audiobooks, Who Said Again is my third paperback, but it's my second audiobook. Because for audiobook purposes, what I did, I combined Mo 1 and Upfront and Straightforward like into one audiobook, which is Mo 1. So not to be confusing, but yeah. But yeah, I would say generally speaking, yes. Who Said Again is my second book. Okay.
And critics say that it's kind of risky to actually, in other words, use kinky, erotic, dirty talk to a woman. So what do you got to say about that?
Yeah, I hear that all the time. Both from general guys in the manosphere as well as either rival dating coaches and conventional PUAs. A lot of guys believe you just can't use sexually provocative language or X-rated or triple X-rated explicit language with women. And that's just simply not 100% true. Now, is there some validity to it? Yeah. Well, this will take me back to when you asked me about the different variations, and I didn't finish. There's, again, Mo 1 Hardcore, regular Mo 1, and then I have a third version. This was created by my brother called Mo 1.5. And again, here's a simple difference. Mo 1 Hardcore is when you start off being profane and explicit. Regular Mo 1 is when you start off with tame language, what I call PG language, and over a period of minutes, say 5, 10, 15 minutes, you slowly escalate to using more provocative and explicit language. And Mo 1.5 is when you don't use any profanity or any sexually explicit language at all. So, number one clarification, you don't have to use profanity or sexually explicit language in order to be Mo 1. You don't have to. Now, it is highly effective with a lot of women. I'll be honest, Mo 1 Hardcore can lead to some amazing seductions, but you don't have to. A lot of women, most of the women I've interacted with in my life, they got highly turned on when I was very explicit. So for these guys who say, no, all women will get turned off, no. Here's an obvious thing. If a woman is not attracted to you, if a woman doesn't find you to one degree or another physically attractive or sexually appealing, then honestly, anything you say to her is going to be a potential turnoff, particularly that has to do with sex.
And so, now that's another word which would be called, from what I see, is called like choosing signals. Yeah. So if a woman's not sent, if you're getting those choosing signals, I guess is kind of what you're saying. But also too, there was a key word that you said here just a minute ago was escalate. And I think a lot of men will probably stop escalating if they get any kind of, but what you had said, if they're still standing there, you're really not getting rejected if they're still talking to you. So how do you tell a guy to keep escalating if they're still talking to you?
Yeah, what you want to do, see, women, I don't want to get too long-winded and too academic and detailed, but one of the things I talk about in my book, Who Said Again, women are heavily influenced by what I refer to as their social programming and their cultural conditioning. Their social programming and cultural conditioning. That's what leads to what's known as women's sexual sensibilities. So in other words, some women have very prudish oriented sexual sensibilities. And in simple terms, some women, it's not that women are turned off by, say, explicit sex talk, but they've been conditioned to believe that they're supposed to be turned off by that.
Got yeah.
And see, that's why a lot of women will say criticize you, but not in the conversation. Because when I explain in more detail in the book, I'll give the simplified version. This is what happens. Let's say you're talking to a wholesome pretender or an erotic hypocrite, and you said something really sexually explicit to her. She'll have what I like to figuratively call the angel on the right shoulder and her little devil on the left shoulder. And the angel, which represents her prudish good girl side, will say, hey, Lisa, don't you dare respond to Tony. Don't you dare, because he's gonna think of you as a slut, and he's gonna tell all his friends that you're a slut. You better not respond to that sex talk. You better tell him that you're offended and you're insulted and that he's totally being a socially inappropriate jerk. You better tell him that. But then the little devil side, which represents her biological impulses and her raw sexual desires, will say, girl, what Tony's talking about is turning me on. You go ahead and give him, you open them legs for Tony. You go ahead and give it to him because he's talking some good shit. I like this guy. I want to give it to him. And so you can say, figuratively speaking, it becomes this battle. It's like the good girl side is saying, don't give in to Tony. And the naughty girl side is saying, give in to Tony. And how that plays out in real time is that a woman will go off on you and say, oh, Tony, I can't believe you said that to me. What do you think I am, a whore, a slut? Oh my God, I can't believe you're talking to me like this. And that's because there's this fight going on in her head between the good girl and the naughty girl. Yeah. And where seduction comes in overly simplistic terms, is you need to have the skills to persuade her to listen to this voice and ignore this voice. Because if you don't successfully do that, and she gives into the good girl voice, then she's going to ultimately end up rejecting you and not sleeping with you.
So you're really not manipulating her. You're really talking to her biological needs.
There you go. I'm glad you said that, Tony. Kudos to you. Because I just got into a debate with somebody on YouTube where he said, Alan, you've always prided yourself as being this non-manipulative type dating coach. But I think, just the fact that you seduce women, he said seduction is inherently manipulative. I don't manipulate women. For example, I don't give a woman the misleading impression that I want a long-term, emotionally profound, strictly monogamous relationship when I know I just want short-term non-monogamous sex. I never do that. That would be probably the most general example of a man manipulating a woman. I don't mislead or manipulate women or lie to them. I just, as you put it, I use my conversation skills in such a way that I want to resonate with a woman's naughty girl side rather than her prudish good girl side.
Got you. Got you. Yeah, I totally understand that. I mean, that makes so much sense. There's no manipulation. You're just speaking to the side of her that is a biological thing in all of us, man or woman.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Now, you have another book called The Beta Male Revolution. And these terms, alpha and beta, heck, alpha, beta, gamma, what other archetypes are there? Yeah, I mean, sigmas. There's just, so talk to me about that book and basically what motivated you to write a book like that.
And that was the very last book I published as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. And there was a few motivations. I'd say the foremost motivation for writing that book was I was hearing a lot of guys complain about the modern day dating scene. And along with that, I don't know if you've probably heard this concept about what's known as the 80-20 rule theory. And so the combination of just guys complaining about the modern day dating scene, and secondly, guys talking about the 80-20 rule theory, I wanted to write a book that in part briefly explained how we got to this point. And so what I start off the book doing is taking us back to the 1960s. What I basically propose and assert in that book is that The reason why the modern day dating scene is so far different than, say, the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s is because prior to the 1960s, all dating pretty much centered around finding your husband or finding your wife. That was pretty much the essence of all dating, is you meet somebody who you're going to ultimately marry. And then what happened, that period between roughly 1960 and 1974 changed everything. And without getting too long-winded and detailed, essentially what happened was, well, I'll give a few highlights of that period. The first thing that happened was the introduction of the birth control pill. Then you had what's known as the second wave of feminism. Then you had what's known as the free love movement / sexual revolution. And then the fourth major thing that happened was the legalization of abortion. And the end result of those four primary factors was that women became far more comfortable having sex with men both before marriage and just generally outside the context of marriage. And what that ultimately led to was kind of two things concurrently that happened. Among men, you could say the delineation between men began to separate between alpha males and beta males. At first, you could say it was like this, but then by the mid to late 70s, it was like this. With women, it went almost just the opposite. With women, before that period between 1960 and 1974, the delineation between the good girls and the promiscuous sluts was like this. Then their gap closed. And so women start looking at, they start being able to compartmentalize guys. In a nutshell is what happened. A lot of women start basically saying, I don't have to look for the total package anymore. I can look for one guy that's just really, really good in bed. I can look for another guy who just has really good, funny sense of humor and great conversation. I can look for another guy who's just financially generous and going to always be willing to help me with my bills, and so on and so on. And so that's kind of where the alpha beta dynamic, basically in a nutshell, how I define an alpha male is a guy that has it going on with the combination of his looks, his confidence and masculinity, his sense of dominance, to the point where, and I would say, if I had one more thing, seductive charm, that women are likely to sleep with him even if he doesn't promise them commitment, long-term commitment, and even if he doesn't offer to be, super financially generous with them. That's what I generally define as an alpha male. Whereas a beta male is a guy who's lacking in one or more areas that I described for the alpha male. Either he might be severely lacking in the looks department, in terms of the combination of confidence and masculinity, he's lacking. In terms of seductive charm, he's lacking. And he's more than willing to pay women money for their sexual companionship, big money. And so women, when it comes to beta males, I was talking about this a little bit earlier, I touched on it. See, the main difference is when a woman feels like she's in the company of beta male, her attitude is going to be like, I'm not having sex with him for free. He's never going to get sex from me for free. He's going to have to pay me, either literally like say, like a trick, the exchange between a trick and a prostitute, direct cash, or indirectly, meaning like, expose me to a higher quality of life and pay my bills and stuff. Whereas the alpha males are the guys that a woman will say, okay, I'll have casual sex with him for free. Again, he doesn't have to promise me any type of long-term commitment. He doesn't have to pay any of my bills. I just think he's just this very charming, seductive, highly masculine man. And I'm naturally motivated to be feminine and submissive in his company. And so you've had this major delineation. Again, it started with the late 60s, early 70s. And what has happened, one reason I wrote that book is because starting with the internet, a lot of men became more cognizant of the fact that they were not the alpha male, but they were more so in the beta male category. It's like you had a lot of guys frustrated, like, why am I not getting the same attention as that guy over there? You know, that guy over there, for example, that guy over there, he doesn't have to take women out on 3, 4, 5 dates. And he still was able to sleep with Cindy, just like within a couple hours after he met her. Whereas with me, I took Cindy out on 4 or 5 dates and I still didn't end up in bed with her. What's the deal? And what happened was guys started sharing information and making guys, including myself, that helped guys realize, okay, it's because the women I've been dealing with look at me as a beta male. And so where the revolution comes into play is that a lot of beta males start saying, hey, I'm not going to be a woman's second choice anymore. Or I'm not going to be the guy that a woman just exploits for my financial resources and material possessions, or exploits me just for my flattering and entertaining conversation. I'm not willing to be that guy anymore. I'm going to demand that, hey, if you're not going to give me the type of sex that you give the Chads of the world, then fuck it. I'm going to ignore you. I'm going to go my own way. Hit, big toe. I'm going to go my own way.
I want to ask you a question, a specific question. And I had asked this on a big cast. I'm not sure. Are you familiar with Day? Are you familiar with Vox at all by any chance? Vox is a kind of like a philosopher. Well, I'd asked him this question. I've asked other people this question. And specifically, I want to ask you because I've got different opinions. Can a man call himself alpha?
Can a man call himself alpha?
Yeah, in other words, can I say I'm Tony, I'm an alpha? I think, this is my opinion, I think that it's the way other men perceive you or women perceive you. I don't think that you can say I'm an alpha. I think it's people will look at you an alpha. I don't think you can. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I totally understand.
You can't physically say I'm an alpha.
Well, here's the thing. You're touching on something that actually has inspired a lot of heated debates within various factions of the manosphere. Because speaking of those two options you presented, there's a lot of men who argue that fuck what women think. I only think you could be an alpha male if other men perceive you as alpha. Mm-hmm. I think that's the ultimate of what determines whether you're alpha, is that if other men who observe you and interact with you, and you know, they're the ones who will ultimately decide if you're alpha. Then there's other guys, and I'm probably more so in this second category, is all about how women perceive you. The women who you interact with, how they perceive you. And so there's kind of been this argument back. Yeah, I would say between the two, I'm more so, well, I kind of say it depends on what aspect of life you're talking about. Like, for example, and I think if you remember my presentation in 2018, I kind of touched on this. I basically, at one point in my presentation, I said, you can be an alpha in one aspect of your life, but be beta. Like I said, I've known guys who were tall, muscular, had great hand-to-hand combat skills. And if you were to ask most men, is this guy alpha? They would say, yeah, that guy's alpha. But I've seen a lot of those same type of guys when they're in the company of their wife, fiance, or girlfriend that were totally henpicked. The woman would be like just dominating them. And I'd be like, no, that ain't alpha to me. If you're letting your wife, fiance, or long-term girlfriend just talk down to you and condescend to you and just generally browbeat you and dominate you, then when it comes to dealing with women, you're not alpha. And some men have tried to push back on that, but I'm like, that's so, again, you can be alpha with men in certain, like in athletics or business, but specifically as it relates to dealing with women, I would lean towards that second category you presented, which is ultimately determined by how women perceive you and evaluate you.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, but to me, in my opinion, when a man looks at another man as an alpha, he looks at him as a leader. He looks at him as a leader, somebody you look up to, somebody you want to inspire to be like. you
I
know.
want a
But I
generation.
do agree with you. Yeah, and I'll agree with you on, like, I have a construction business, and I can't tell you, whatever she wants, happy wife, happy life. I've heard that a million times in my business. I'm a remodeling contractor. So I look at those guys as like, what, shouldn't you be running the show? You know, but that's just my opinion. Shouldn't the man be running the show and talking to me instead? But that, that's, I guess everybody kind of has their different takes on that as far as what's alpha, what's beta, and who perceives you as an alpha and a beta.
Yeah.
And speaking of alphas, you recently got married, and I believe you have a son on the way. Is that correct?
This is correct. Yeah, I got married on Friday, July 17th, and at the time I was married, my wife was already pregnant, and she's due to deliver in mid-September, approximately roughly 5 weeks from now. She's due to deliver my first child and my first son. So I'm very excited about the prospect of becoming a father.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm congratulations, and I'm happy for you. I
Thank you.
think, I know, was it a big deal in the manosphere when you got married?
Oh
Was
yeah.
it I mean, to me, I was looked at it, I'm like, holy crap, you know,
Well,
ARC's getting married.
yeah, it's funny. Well, on the positive end, I got a lot of congratulations from a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
guys, particularly my followers and supporters. But it's interesting. I had some guys though, related to the book we were just discussing, the Beta Male Revolution. The subtitle of that book it's called The Beta Male Revolution: Why Many Men Are Losing Interest in Marriage in Today's Society.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of guys, I think, based on that subtitle, were under the impression that that book was in some way, form, or fashion, an anti-marriage book. But I've had to clarify to guys. I said I never said I was anti-marriage ever. But yeah, when I first announced I was engaged, a lot of guys were coming saying, "Alan, I'm sorry, but you're contradicting yourself. You wrote the Beta Male Revolution. That book is totally about anti-marriage, and now you're getting mad." I said, "No, it's not. What I do is I present an objective view evaluation of the pros and cons of marriage, but I never flat out in that book said I'm totally anti-marriage. But I do say in that book that for some guys, there's some guys that plain and simply should not think about marriage,
Mm-hmm.
particularly going back to the delineation between alpha males and beta males. I feel like a lot of beta males should not get married because they're going to a lot of times get exploited, particularly financially. They're going to get financially exploited. But for the most part, there's exceptions here and there. But for the most part, I don't see the problem with any guy who's a genuine, legitimate alpha male getting married because he's gonna lead the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
He's gonna set the terms and conditions of that marriage, and that his wife is going to follow his lead.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see the problem with it. The main reason I'll tell, at least one reason I would lean towards marriage, is because I always wanted to have children. And I had
Mm-hmm.
told my followers that for like the last 10, 15, 20 years. I've always wanted children. Like even when I didn't see myself getting married, I always wanted to have children, but they kind of two were kind of interconnected because I never wanted to have a son or daughter and have the biological mother raising that child in a separate household. So at
Mm-hmm.
minimum, I knew if I had children, at minimum, I knew I wanted to cohabitate. And
Mm-hmm.
even more so, I felt like I would be open to the possibility of getting married because I've always wanted to raise children in a two-parent household.
Mm-hmm.
So in summation, I would say this. I would say if there's guys in the manosphere saying that all men should get married, they're wrong. And on
Mm-hmm.
the flip side, if there's guys in the manosphere saying no man should get married, they're also wrong. If you're on either extreme, to me, you're wrong. I think marriage benefits some men, again, particularly men who want to raise children, raise a family. But for other men, they're probably better off remaining a confirmed bachelor.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So, but it's also great that now this son you're going to raise is going to have a masculine father, which is now going to project into his family. And I think that's what's missing in a lot of families today. So many single mothers or single father households. Because I believe a kid needs both, and I'm of old school where I had both. I'm lucky, but I don't see that. I mean, the divorce rate is through the roof, and I think we're in a disposable society. So anybody that does go ahead and raise their child in a two-person male and female household, I think is going to be well better off for sure. So
I 1000% agree. And again, that's one of the things that contributed to me wanting to get married. I did not want to have, I didn't want to have a baby mama, baby daddy scenario.
Mm-hmm.
I just did not want to have that scenario. And I wanted I want my children to be raised in a two-parent household, because like you, I was raised in a two-parent household. And I saw the benefits of having both the masculine energy of my father and the feminine energy of my mother. They both contributed to the man I am today. I think if you took away one or the other, definitely if you took my father out of the household, I would be a totally different dude than I am right now. And to a slightly less extent, if you took my mother's feminine energy out of my upbringing, I would be a different dude. I needed both of those in my life, and my brother has said the same thing to his friends and acquaintances. I think children need both the masculine energy and the feminine energy in their household.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Well, I'll tell you what, let's wrap this up. I want you to give everybody the ways that they can get in contact with you. Now, if anybody needs coaching, of course, you have a Patreon and a coaching. You're a professional dating coach. Yes. So how can people contact you and get a hold of you for coaching advice?
Okay, I'm gonna give at least 3 or 4 contacts. One, email would be coaching@mode1.net. That's MODEONE.net. Coaching@mode1.net. And then number 2, all of my books on Amazon.com, and specifically my 4 audio books are on the division of Amazon called audible.com. My main website is called Direct Approach Dating, as one word, directapproachdating.net. No, .com, I'm sorry, .com. Directapproachdating.com. Directapproachdating.com. And then finally, I actually do some consultations for couples, both married and unmarried couples, who are interested in incorporating elements of BDSM, which is erotic domination, erotic submission, as well as polyamory. And that would be mode1.net/training. Mode1.net/training.
Okay. Awesome. Well, good. Sounds like you're doing well for yourself. Again, congratulations on your marriage and your upcoming child. I'm happy for you. And I did enjoy this conversation. So I'm Tony Bruno, and I'm going to leave links also for Amazon links for your books in the description down below. So Al, awesome conversation. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your knowledge. And hopefully, again, your son enters this world.
Thank you so much, Tony, for having me. I want to just quickly say, man, I love you and your brother. You guys are both very classy gentlemen, very intelligent and articulate. And I can tell you were raised by 2 quality parents, because they produced 2 quality sons. I appreciate this opportunity to talk to you.
Well, I appreciate that too. Thank you very much. ARC, you have a good day, and I'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Awesome.